Hello, and welcome to It Matters How We Treat One Another, the social psychology show. I'm your host, Matthew David Vasco. If you have subscribed to our show on YouTube or your favorite podcasting platform, then thank you. We are grateful for each and every one of our subscribers. This episode features an interview with Jaime Kurtz, professor of psychology and researcher at James Madison University. She will be talking about the book she co-authored with Natalie Kerr entitled Our New Social Life: Science-Backed Strategies for Creating Meaningful Connection. Together, Jaime and I will delve into all the brilliant things we can do our whole lives through to combat loneliness. You won't want to miss that. But first, our inspiring news. If inspiring things are happening in your neck of the woods, then please direct message us on one of our social media accounts and let us know. You can find us by our show name on Facebook, Instagram, and X. This week's inspiring news comes from our subscriber, Lisa from Los Angeles. She shared a video with us of actor Steve Carell announcing that the charity Alice's Kids will be paying for the senior prom tickets of Pasadena Unified students affected by the E10 fire. For example, 200 students of Muir High School in Pasadena lost their homes in that fire. So this is a wonderful feel-good gesture by that organization. As an Angelino myself, I can attest that it has been very inspiring seeing how big-hearted people from all over have been stepping up to help our community recover from the fires that ravaged parts of Los Angeles in early January. So thank you very much to Alice's Kids and Steve Carell. Again, if you know of inspiring things happening in your area, then please DM us on our socials and let us know. Thanks. Up next is our feature segment. But first, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Some years ago, I was struggling with depression. I knew I was depressed, but I had a hard time asking for help. It seemed like a huge hurdle to figure out how to access therapy services, and the thought of opening up about my depression made me nervous. Eventually, I did get brave and sought help. Finally, starting therapy was such a relief because knowing I had a professional in my corner helped me start to feel better after even the first session. Thankfully, BetterHelp is on a mission to make starting therapy easier. Fill out a questionnaire and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple days. All you need to do is click the link in our description to get started. And BetterHelp is offering fans of this show 10% off your first month of therapy. All you have to do is visit betterhelp.com/it matters. That's betterhelp.com/it matters. And now for our feature segment. Jaime Kurtz is a professor of psychology at James Madison University in Virginia. Her research focuses on happiness, savoring, and social connection. In addition to co-authoring Our New Social Life, she is the author of The Happy Traveler: Unpacking the Secrets of Better Vacations. Welcome, Jaime.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. Yeah, thanks for being on the show. I'm so excited to talk about this topic. This is something I've been wanting to cover for a while. So
Good.
great. I'll just dive right into the questions.
Okay.
So, in your book, it says that a person should, quote, prioritize social connection like your life depends on it. Are social connections really that important, and how so?
Yeah, they really are. So there's a lot of research evidence out there that loneliness and feeling disconnected, those states are related to many negative outcomes in life. I do want to give a cautionary note that much of this research is correlational, meaning that we can't say for sure that loneliness is what causes these things.
Mm.
That would be very unethical research to do for reasons I won't get into here. But we just know that as loneliness increases, these other risk factors tend to increase too. That said, there is a pretty convincing story to be told here. So people, when they're going through a bout of loneliness, they tend to feel kind of dull mentally. Their moods absolutely suffer, right? They're more prone to anxiety and depression. And then over the long term, loneliness tends to be related to negative physical health outcomes too. So people who are lonely are more likely to suffer from stress-related ailments, cognitive decline, dementia, things like that, even early death. So there's a famous statistic that comes from the Surgeon General of the US that loneliness is about as lethal to our health as like a pack-a-day smoking habit in terms of our longevity. So why is this? Is a really important question. And one of the pathways might be through stress, right? So when we're feeling close and connected to others, we feel at ease, we feel protected, we feel safe. There's even an evolutionary advantage to having close connected relationships. Like in past evolutionary time, when we were feeling rejected or isolated by our small community, we were at really great risk of death, right? Like you needed to band together to survive. Nowadays, that need isn't quite so pressing, but that feeling still lives on in us, that nagging sense that something is off, that something is wrong. Also, other people are really good for our brain health, right? Even people you know really well, you kind of have to be a little bit on your toes in terms of conversation, anticipating what they're going to say, reading their body language. It's really mentally engaging to have relationships. If you were maybe during the pandemic spending a lot more time alone, maybe you didn't feel depressed necessarily, but you might have felt like kind of dull mentally, like I know I did. And that might just be that kind of lack of stimulation. So multiply that over years of your life, and you could see how that might just lead to some or relate to some negative outcomes, right?
Right.
So yeah, it doesn't just make us feel good, make us feel happy to have strong relationships, but it also seems linked to our health. So it definitely is something we want to prioritize as a health behavior.
Fantastic. Your life really does depend on it. How about that? Your
Yeah.
book says that many of today's norms are getting in the way of a healthy social life. What are some of these norms and how do they get in the way of a healthy social life?
So when we're talking about norms, we're just talking about these sort of subtle rules of modern or of life that we follow sometimes without even really realizing it. And so some of the norms of modern life that can encourage disconnection, I mean, the most obvious one is probably our reliance on technology and social media as a primary form of engagement. And it leaves you sometimes feeling a little lacking, right? When we're just texting people quickly, when we're liking something on social media, we might feel like, oh, yeah, I'm getting my social needs met, but we're really not.
Mm.
Again, going back to that evolutionary idea, we didn't evolve to be, communicating on devices with little icons. We evolved to see faces, to hear voices, to hear laughter, to feel that kind of face-to-face kind of closeness. So
Yeah.
that's one norm that, is very easy to bring up and talk about as something that isn't necessarily 100% bad, but if we rely too much on it and forget about the face-to-face contact, it can definitely leave us wanting. A couple other norms that we explore in the book, and I want to give a shout out again to my co-author Natalie Kerr, my colleague at JMU, who co-authored this book with me. We talk about hustle culture, just the busyness, needing
Mm.
to just kind of be constantly scheduled and doing that to our children as well, right?
Mm.
Which also overschedules us. It doesn't leave a lot of time for grabbing a coffee with a friend or having friends over for dinner or going to game night or something. We're just so busy, and there's some social value in seeming busy.
Mm.
We like to look important, I guess, but that can make it hard to just hang out with people.
So
So
true.
Yeah, that's another one. We also move a lot. Like we're a very residentially mobile culture. And moving and starting over is exciting, but often you have to make new friends and recreate your social life. So that can be a challenge. So yeah, just really scratching the surface of some of these rules that we follow, often without knowledge, without a whole lot of awareness that can keep us a little bit stuck. None of these things are inherently bad, right?
Uh,
They're just sort of stealthy forces that we need to be aware of and tune in. And like if we are feeling lonely and disconnected, there be something in the background of our life that's maybe playing a role in that?
yeah, societal norms are such a tricky thing, right? Because they're just sort of the waters we swim in, and
Mhm.
we may not even really question them a lot. It's like, well, this is just the way life is today, right?
Right. Mhm.
Yeah, so you're calling us to think about it a little more, think about how we're constructing our lives and spending our times, huh?
Yeah, and how do these things make you feel? Does scrolling Instagram make you feel connected? If so, good, great, no problem. But is it
Mhm.
really?
Right. Yeah, I always feel like after maybe a text conversation or a little time on social media, I've had sort of half a social interaction, right?
Mhm.
It's not a complete interaction. It's not as good as a phone call or even a Zoom session like this, right? It's
Yeah.
sort of like, well, that was a little satisfying, I guess.
Yeah, and we're so averse to picking up the phone and calling someone. That's become a norm too, right? Like
I
we need
miss
to
that.
make an
Yeah.
appointment. Like, can I call you? Or is it a good time? And we used to just call people. So all these little things, they sometimes take shape really slowly, and they can just leave us feeling a little off.
So true.
Mm.
I've seen reports that there's an epidemic. I've even seen that word used, epidemic of loneliness these days. What
Mhm.
are a couple of your pro tips that you would give people to overcome loneliness?
Mhm. I mean, the first thing is to tune into yourself and ask yourself, am I lonely? Right. And there
Mhm.
are actually standardized measures you can take. You can Google something like the UCLA loneliness scale. There are things out there that you can use, but generally, because it's an evolved warning system that we have that like our social needs aren't being met. So you probably know if you're lonely. You might spend a lot of time alone, by the way, and not feel lonely. You might enjoy solitude. We'll talk about that a little bit later, I think. But everyone has their own level of social stimulation that they need to feel good, to feel connected. So, but if you do feel like, yeah, I could do with a little bit more social connection. There is a lot of sort of simple advice out there, like join a club or go to the gym or start talking to strangers in line at the grocery store. And I think it's well-meaning advice. It might work for some people, but what that advice doesn't always pay attention to is the fact that sometimes loneliness comes along with social anxiety, with a real fear of putting yourself out there, a lot of negative self-talk that, well, people won't like me, or that's going to be a really awkward interaction. So I think it's really essential before we just go out and socialize to question, why is it hard, right? Why are we feeling so stuck?
Yeah.
And yeah, because loneliness, it unfortunately can kind of create a cycle where you feel lonely and you feel a little bit badly about yourself for feeling lonely. There is this stigma. You might tell yourself, oh, it's because people don't like me, or I'm weird, or I'm awkward. And then it makes it even harder to put yourself out there. And then the cycle continues. So we have a chapter in the book about all these kind of internal barriers that we have to connection. And we explore this idea a bit and we talk about some common biases that we have. So, for example, there's something in the literature called the liking gap, which is this pervasive tendency to underestimate how much other people like us and enjoy our company, which is good news, right? Um,
That is
so
good
you have,
news.
yeah. So you have a conversation with someone who you don't know very well. And afterwards, you might be thinking, oh, I was so awkward. They could tell how nervous I was. And if you actually asked that person, which we never really do, right? But if we asked them, they would probably say something like, "Oh, she seemed really nice," or "That was a fun conversation." Or they might be so much in their head saying the same things to themselves that you're saying to yourself that they're not even thinking about you, right? So,
Right.
you know, so we tend to have this, like, we don't see these same things in other people that we experience in ourselves. So the liking gap, people probably like you more than you think. That's good. The spotlight effect, it's another fun one where it's kind of built into the name, but we feel like we're always in the spotlight and other people are paying more attention to us, judging us more than they probably really are.
Mm,
Everyone's in their own spotlight, right?
mhm.
So if you say something kind of weird in a conversation, or if you like literally trip and fall while you're walking, like people probably don't notice as much as you think, or if they do, they're going to forget about it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But we can just stew about these things and they can really keep us stuck, especially if we are prone to social anxiety or low self-esteem, things like that. So just kind of being aware of these biases and know that they plague everyone for
Yeah.
the most part, is a good starting point. Sometimes we have to start within before we,
Yeah.
just put ourselves out there. And then in terms of actual external ways to combat loneliness, one thing I do think has a lot of merit behind it is service, volunteering.
Hmm.
I think when you help other people in whatever way feels natural and interesting to you, you
Yeah.
get out of your head a little bit, right? You're not
Mhm.
thinking so much about yourself. You're thinking about what does this other person need? So getting involved in some kind of volunteer community, I think, is a really nice way to not only benefit others, but help get over this kind of paralysis we have sometimes with our social life.
Yeah, that's one that we actually have shared on our Facebook page before. The podcast has a Facebook page, and we have said, uh, if you're feeling down, a
Mhm,
great way to feel better is to get out and help others. That is a known sort of a bit of social psychology there, right? That we actually feel better when we help others feel better, right? It's
mhm,
really interesting what you said about loneliness. It can be a bit of a downward spiral, right? Because first you're lonely and then you're feeling bad about feeling lonely, which may make you more self-conscious or something, right? And it can sort of become this downward spiral that leads you into greater and greater loneliness if you don't take steps like maybe reading your book to try to pull out of it, right? So
mhm,
I thought your book was fantastic, and I really did like all those reassuring things in there about how we tend to underestimate how well liked we are.
mhm.
That feels good to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, other people want to connect. We all want to connect. Sometimes it just takes somebody to take that first step. Um, so yeah, I think if we just can kind of keep that in mind. I mean, sometimes people are in a bad mood. They're having a bad day. They're just wanting to spend some time in their own head. We can't control that. We can't predict that. But for the
Right.
most part, we all have the social need for connection.
So let's talk a little about putting ourselves out there, right? So what are a few tricks for turning a casual conversation into an opportunity for deeper connection?
Right. That is kind of a struggle, right? How do we get past small talk?
Hmm.
Um, and we probably all have people in our lives that we would consider acquaintances. I mean, we don't really say that because it doesn't sound so nice. We'd probably say my friend, but generally they're like superficial relationships. Maybe we'd want to get to know them a little bit more, go a little bit deeper, but we just don't always know how. So sometimes it involves elevating the conversation a little bit beyond talk of the weather or our favorite sports team or something. So one thing we might do is like, how do we ask better questions? How do we pull things out of people? Like, hey, what are you excited about?
Yeah.
Like, what's something cool that's coming up?
Mhm.
Or what are you into? Not work, but how do you spend your off time?
Yeah.
What are your interests? And it might feel a little awkward at first, to kind of ask these questions. But like, I would love if someone asked me something like that. It's like, wow, you want to really know about me. Wow, that's really lovely. And chances are it'll lead to a better conversation. Hopefully the person will reciprocate. You might start revealing a little bit more about yourself, in a socially appropriate way. And you might even start to feel more open and vulnerable.
Mm.
And that's really I think the true path to like deeper relationships, deeper conversation. I'm certainly not the first to say this. Brene Brown and others have explored this topic, but this idea of vulnerability as a pathway to deeper connection. And that feels scary. It can feel very exposed, but I think that's often the surest route.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm always a little, I'm getting a little personal here. I'm always a little jealous of my wife because she's really good at putting herself out there. She will share things with people like, oh my gosh, we went to this amazing restaurant and you've just got to try it. And I'm like, why are you telling them that? But then it turns into this amazing conversation where
Mhm.
they're chatting about restaurants and their favorite foods and their favorite places to eat. And I'm like, wow, you are like a real pro. She's a publicist and she just knows people. She knows how to chat with people. And I'm like, wow, it just blows my mind how she takes just a brief meeting with someone and turns it into a deeper conversation. I wish I had that magic touch she has, but it does kind of come down to vulnerability, like you're saying.
Mhm.
You've got to take a risk and put yourself out there, right?
Yeah, something I really enjoyed learning about, but just on a personal level when I was researching the book, is called the beautiful mess effect. And it's
Hmm.
one of these internal biases that many of us have, where we really value when others are vulnerable and open to us. It makes us feel like, wow, you trust me. You really want me to know this. You feel safe with me, right? That's the beautiful part. But then when we do it in return, we think we look messy. Like, oh, they don't want to see this. They want to see a perfectly buttoned up, all together person. And like, why? Why would it only work in one direction? Right? So letting ourselves be a little bit messy and show those different sides of ourselves is hard, but it does, I think, make the other person feel like they're really receiving something like kind of a gift from you that not everybody gets to see.
That's so true.
Uh-huh.
You do sort of feel honored in a way when someone's
Yeah.
willing to open up to you.
Right. We can't do it all the time. I think we have to be a little strategic about it, um, but when we do it, it's strategically at the right time, it does deepen those relationships.
That's really good advice. Thank you. Your book offers some tips for how to feel connected even when we're alone. I think you might have alluded to this a little bit earlier in our conversation. Would you be willing to share a couple of those with us?
Sure. Yeah. So in the book, we really encourage people to broaden their sense of connection and their definition of what it means to be connected. Because it's not just about being connected to others, although that's huge and we stress that quite a lot, but you can also feel more connected to yourself, your own values, your own interests, your passions. Like we can feel really disconnected from who we are truly. Meditation is one pathway to developing that greater sense of internal connection. And then there are things that we can do even when we're by ourselves to feel connected to others. Speaking of meditation, there's a practice known as loving kindness meditation. And you can find these if you just go on YouTube and look it up. You'll find tons of activities you can try. So, loving kindness meditation involves imagining different people in your life and really trying to perspective take, put yourself in their shoes, and send them these well wishes. So, you might repeat phrases like, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be free from suffering while thinking of this person. And there's a lot of data to show that not only is it calming, relaxing, all the great stuff meditation does, but it also makes you feel more empathy in general and toward those people specifically, and a greater sense of connection. So that's one example. Walking in nature, we can feel connected to the natural world as well. And that can feel really nice. So spending time in nature. Spending time journaling about people, expressing gratitude. You might even tell the person you're grateful for them, but you don't necessarily have to. That's another way we can feel connected to others even when we're physically alone. So there are lots of tips out there.
Yeah. Yeah, one that I sometimes will share is just reminding people that I care about them. You know, I worry sometimes that people, I don't know, get down in the dumps or something and feel all alone in the world, you know. And sometimes I think maybe it can help my friends feel a little better if they just will remember that there's somebody else out there who's thinking of them and caring about them. And I'll even do a thing where I reach out to people just because I'm thinking of them. You know, maybe shoot them a quick text or how you doing? What's going on today? What you up to? You know, I don't know. Do you think that there's a merit in that? Just reaching out to people
Absolutely.
when you're thinking of them?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think if we feel, is this the right thing to do? Is this weird? Is this okay? Just ask yourself, how would I feel if someone did that to me or for me? And chances are you would say, that would be so nice.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good little rule of thumb. Just reflect it back on yourself. Yeah, and using text and our devices is not all bad, right? They are wonderful tools to keep in touch with people that we otherwise might not. So, I don't want to say that we should never just pick up our phone to text someone. That can be a
Yeah.
lifeline sometimes.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jamie. Thanks for coming on the show and talking about your book. I mean, this is truly a situation where I learned about your book through, I think, Greater Good.
Oh,
I
good.
think you and your co-author might have shared a little excerpt from it on there.
Mhm.
And I thought this would be excellent for the show to get one of these authors on to talk about this wonderful research they're doing into, helping turn the tide on loneliness and create more meaning in our lives and deeper. This is all the kinds of things the show's about. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It's fun to talk about, and I also agree it's really important too.
Yeah. Well, we always like to end on a high note, and I like to finish with the rapid fire feel good five. And I think I might have sent those to you ahead of time to give you a little heads up. So, are you ready?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think about them too much, so they are a little bit spontaneous,
Well,
but
they're meant to be kind of off the
yeah,
cuff. So,
okay.
okay, awesome. Here we go. Here we go. What's your favorite feel good song?
Mr. Brightside,
Oh, that is a good one. What is your favorite feel good movie or TV show?
movie, You've Got Mail,
Okay.
TV show, Gilmore Girls.
Oh, nice. What helps lift you up when you're feeling down?
Going for a run, which I'm hoping to do this afternoon because it is a beautiful 55 degrees after a long string of winter.
Nice. What gives you your life meaning?
Making people laugh or making people feel heard or understood.
Excellent. And what inspires you?
I'd say like being in the presence of people who are like fully committed to pursuing their passions.
Ooh, excellent. That's a good one. So, well, I again really appreciate having you on the show. Thanks so much for taking the time
Yeah,
to talk to us. And I hope everyone will run out and get your book.
that would be great. Thank you. This is
All
really
right.
fun.
Thank you. This brings us to the end of this episode of It Matters How We Treat One Another. Thank you to our guest, Jaime Kurtz. Pick up her and Natalie Kerr's new book, Our New Social Life, everywhere books are sold. Check our episode description for a link to the UCLA Loneliness Scale, which Jamie mentioned in our interview. Please subscribe to keep up with all our episodes, and you can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/itmatterspatrons or by shopping our Etsy store at etsy.com/shop/itmattersmerch. There are links in the description. Your quote of the week is, quote, I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. End quote. That is from sociologist Brene Brown. And remember, treat everyone with kindness, respect, empathy, and compassion, and try for love and acceptance whenever possible. Be well, and much love to you all.